Hey, we want to talk a little bit about boundaries, especially for kids. Kids often look at boundaries as somebody imposing a limit or keeping me from doing what I want to do. And they always look at it kind of as a negative thing. But really, as parents, as we use boundaries, it's both for a positive and a negative. Boundaries can work either way. So kids need to learn that balance as they view boundaries. If you remind them of the verse from Luke 16:10, where Jesus says, "Suppose you can be trusted with something very little, then we know you can also be trusted with something very large. But suppose that you are not honest with something very little, then you will also not be honest with something very large." So kids have an opportunity to grow in a particular area of life within those boundaries and to show that they are growing. I want to just show you a really simple diagram that we use with kids to help them see this pattern that's been in their lives from the very beginning, but will also be a pattern for the rest of their life. And we'll talk about that in a second. When kids are very little, we often keep babies in a crib. There's boundaries, there's borders, because that's where they're safe. And so we have this little boundary of their bed or their crib, and we put them there um, until they get to be a certain age. And then pretty soon we expand the boundaries and say, you can be anywhere within this room, right? We've moved you out, and there's some rules and regulations in the room. You got to take care of things. Be nice. Don't break your things, and stay here. It's probably a little gate at the door to keep you in there until you're old enough and mature enough then to be trusted. Finally, our next step into the whole house, and so we expand the boundaries to the house. And you can go into almost any room, and you can touch most things. There are certainly rules about what you can and can't do in the house. Some things are reserved for outside, but inside, this is how we play. These are the things you can touch and can't touch. Those are the rules for the house. And as you get a little bit older and you've shown some maturity, and you can be trusted in this little thing, then pretty soon we expand that to be to the whole yard. And we say, okay, you can go and play in the yard. You don't even have to be supervised most times, but I'll trust you to be outside stay in the fence, stay in the yard. And then, of course, as you get a little older, then you can be trusted, and the boundaries are expanded to include the whole neighborhood. But you got to stay on the street. There's curfews. There's stuff you can do. Can't play in the street. You're going to play in the park or in the yard, but it's in that neighborhood. And eventually, there's beyond. There's the whole area um, outside of that. Life then begins to happen. So within these boundaries, kids need to learn that I have to do a couple of things. Before I can move on to the next level, there's a couple of things, a couple of factors that I need to be aware of. And one of them is the calendar. Sometimes it's just an age thing. Sometimes you have to wait till you're a certain age. There's no getting around it. Those are the rules in life. You see them at Disney World, the rules there about how big you have to be to go on a particular ride, how old you have to be to get into certain things and do. That's life. Some of it is just the calendar. You're going to have to grow to a point where we can trust you at the next level and increase the boundaries for you. Some of it's conduct. It's how you act in the current boundary. Kids want to jump right to the end. They want to go way out. I don't think it's fair. You won't let me go all the way out and do whatever I want. Well, I have to see some conduct. I have to watch how you behave. You have to kind of show me the maturity by the decisions you make and the choices you make. I have to watch your conduct. So when you're old enough, or when the calendar says it's time and your conduct backs that up, I can expand the boundaries. Because that's what I want to do. I'm not holding back. I'm not keeping boundaries because I'm trying to punish you. I'm going to reward you at the right time when I see the right conduct. And then the third C is character. There's some attitude. There's some responsibility. Um, there are other things that parents look at as you're in your current boundary. So in each level of boundary, you get to grow in responsibility and treating that level of freedom, of responsibility, treating that with respect and obeying the rules of it and treating everything in there in a way that shows that you are honoring and valuing it, and you're still obeying any curfews, any rules of what to touch and not touch, anything, any places you can go and can't go. So there's some age with the calendar, and then there's some conduct we're watching, and then some character. We're watching all those things. And as you demonstrate, as you grow and show that you have maturity, Jesus said, if you can be trusted in the little, then I know I can trust you in the big. But kids also know that they need to know that there is a plan to move them on to great freedom, that it is not our desire to keep them locked up in the house or in their room for their whole life. I want you to have those freedoms. I want you to grow in that, but you're going to have to grow and show in each of those categories in the area calendar, conduct, and character before we can move you on. Now, kids know that if I decide I'm in the yard and I have that freedom and the fence is my boundary, if I crawl over the fence and try to get out, what's going to happen? Yeah, what's going to happen is I'm going to be grounded. I'm going to be asked to move back into the house. Yeah, I see I can't trust you in the yard, so I'm pulling you back into the house. Now, you go out over the fence and into the street, yeah, maybe you get sent back to your room. You're all the way back to that level. So how far back you go depends on how big you messed up and what you did, what attitude you had and what conduct you had. You may go all the way back to, dude, it's time for you to go to bed. Go to bed without dinner or whatever. Go back to your room. Stay in the house. We have some boundaries. So kids can learn that there is, with boundaries, there is an opportunity for them to grow in that area of responsibility and show that they are maturing, that they're growing in conduct and in character. And when the calendar is right, then they can move on to the next level. This same process happens in life, even in their school. When they go to class, first they're a student, and they just go to the class and sit in their seat. And then as they begin to show some responsibility, their conduct and their character begins to be demonstrated. Some of them get to be promoted to line leader or their peer buddy or their teacher's helper. Maybe they even get to go on to student council eventually. That stuff doesn't just happen. They mature and they grow in their conduct and character, and things begin to open up. There are boundaries that begin to open up to them. Every kid wants to drive one day, but there are certain limitations. You can't just give a 10-year-old the keys to the car and let him drive. There's a calendar issue. The law says you have to wait till you're 15 and a half before you can get your permit and start the process. But kids need to also understand that it's not just a calendar issue, that automatically you get to drive at 16 because you're 16. There's some conduct and some character issues. And usually those are demonstrated before the car's involved. When I watch as a parent to see how you take care of my stuff, how you obey the rules, how you respect authority. Before I'm going to give you the keys to my car, I want to know that you're going to be able to take care of it. You're going to be able to obey the rules of the road. You're going to show respect to authorities and others on the road and the police when you come in contact with them. So there's some other things involved in that. You don't just automatically get those boundaries increased because, oops, the calendar says so, you got to give it to me. So the boundary before you get the car, opportunity for you to grow and show that you can handle it in all the areas of conduct and character. So kids go from a car seat, and there are rules of car seat. How old you have to be before you can get out of the car seat, how much you have to weigh before you get out of the car seat. Then you go to being a passenger, and I get to choose the seat I'm going to sit in and how I show respect for others in the car and the rules of the car. That's going to determine where I even get to sit in the car, whether it's window or in the middle. But then there's that whole permit process and licensing. Even when you get your license, you can't just do whatever you want. There's certain regulations about who you can have in the car for the first 6 months. or so. So you have to be willing to follow all those rules. And finally, you're a driver and you get to go and drive wherever you want, as long as you are showing good conduct and character. What happens if you're driving and you abuse or neglect the rules of the road? Yeah, you're going to get pulled over, you're going to get a ticket. You could even get your license taken away, and then you back the boundaries down. Now you have to go back to being a passenger for a while before you get your license again. So this happens in lots of areas of life. How you behave, how you develop your character, being faithful in the little things determines when you move on to the next. How you get blessed and how those boundaries get expanded. It's up to you. So you have a big part to play in this by demonstrating your character and your conduct at each level you're at. Now, some kids waste their time sitting in their room dreaming of the day when they're going to be free and they're going to be able to go out and do whatever they want. And so they, instead of looking at, hey, while I'm here, I need to be demonstrating that I have good character and I'm good conduct. I can be trusted in the little things here. I'm going to take care of my room. I'm going to keep it neat. I'm going to respect the things in here. I'm going to invite others in. I'm going to demonstrate a cooperative spirit. All those things, because that's going to move me on to another level. So don't just sit back and be disgruntled because you can't do what you think you ought to be doing. Use the time now to be faithful where you are, knowing that your parents want to see you move on to the next level. It's the same way spiritually. God wants you to grow. God wants to give you blessing and responsibility, give you ministry, keep expanding the boundaries. But what is he looking for? Your faithfulness now in little things. Being responsible, being caring, being respectful, being a godly person now with the little bit that he's given you. And when he sees that you can be trusted with a little, he's going to expand and give you more. So I hope this diagram, it's really a practical diagram of real life for kids, will help you have that discussion about boundaries, blessings, responsibilities, and how we grow. I hope it helps. Thanks. See you later.